Hello, there's a lot of you here today. And hello, thank you so much for joining us too. This is cool, I love this. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to unpick a little bit around what good looks like. It's a question that we get asked here at the CCMA quite a bit. What does good look like? We've been asked that for years. It's one of the reasons why we do the awards. So in a moment, I'm going to invite 3 people to join me, Helen, Heather and Joe, and between them they are judges, they are award winners, and they know what good looks like. So we're going to unpick that. If throughout the course of this session you have any questions to ask, if I have enough time at the end, bearing in mind I've got 6 people coming and joining me in a moment, then I am going to open to the floor and see if anybody's got any questions for any of our panelists. Once I've had a chat with Helen, Heather and Joe, I am going to invite 3 analysts, consultants up on stage to have a look at where they think things are not working quite so well and where they think we could be maybe spending a little bit more time on and focus. And that's going to be with Neris, Don and Jason. So, but first, what does good look like? So I've tried to put this down on one slide. So last year, after about a year in production, we created the Contact Center Standards Framework. And it was to try and address this, what does good look like? I think what is really, really obvious is that there is no one size fits all. But there are some really clear things that every organization, every customer contact operation should be looking at. And so we created the Contact Center Standards Framework with a couple of industry-leading consultants, one of which is here today, and also with a panel of industry leaders who were our advisory panel. 5 people that currently run contact center operations, and they brought with them massive depth, massive experience, cross-sector to help us develop them. And there's 5 core things. I know there's more than that on here right now, but there are 5 core things that we talked about in these standards. Underpinning them is culture. You've got to get the right culture in order for everything else on this wheel to work. The other piece, strategy. I am going to go through this wheel quite quickly, by the way, because I want to get our panelists on. Strategy. You need to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. And then you need to know, when you've got there, what happens next. Customer. Hey, we all talk about customer. We all talk about, actually, are you focusing on the customer and delivering a service for a customer? And it's that genuine focus on customers that actually really, really wins. But it only wins when it's in hand with everything else on this wheel. Colleagues. It's one of the things that the CCMA we really, really strive for, is making sure that organizations look after their colleagues. Frontline through to management. That's really, really important. And we know that happy people, happy customers. Kind of know about that. Operations. No surprise, process and, dare I say, technology, given the company that we're in. Got to get that right in order for your contact center to sing. Those 5 elements aren't really a massive surprise. But what I then did, after pulling this out of the standards, I thought, actually, do you know what? We've got some judging criteria. We run the UK National Contact Center Awards. We've got this brilliant judging criteria that has been working for quite a long time, but has been adapted, and we're constantly looking at adapting that with our head judges. And we also run the European Contact Center and Customer Service Awards. And that's a different type of awards program. UK's focus on people, the Europeans focus on organizations and projects. And so I thought, let me tap into that criteria and have a look what's missing. Or rather, what additional pieces we should be thinking about in the context of these 5 core areas. And yeah, there were things like customer-centered culture that were in the criteria, which kind of is covered through the focus on customer. But I wanted to pull out these 4 other areas around the outside. And I think for me, this is more about a mindset. So engagement. We talk about employee engagement. Yes, you've got to make sure that your employees are with you when you bring about change. But it's more than that. Engaging with your senior leaders, engaging outside of the contact center, engaging even further than that. So for me, it's that much broader piece around engagement. Innovation, we've heard Stu talk about that a lot this morning. Innovation, we know that things are moving fast. I'm a big champion of keeping things fresh, and frankly, you've got to keep innovating, otherwise you're going to get left behind. You've got to innovate just to stand still, let alone get ahead. Impact. And we know that we're an industry that really likes to measure, but for me, this is more than NPS. This is more than your CSAT scores. For me, this is about the kind of impact that you're having on your organization, on the planet, on society. So thinking about your contact center operation around what kind of impact it's actually having. And commercial, this was a hard word. This was a hard word. Commercial. Cost center to profit center? Yes. But to be honest with you, as business leaders, we all need to be aware of the impact or the value that you're having on your organization, because at the end of the day, if we are too expensive in customer operations, then we might be having a real negative impact on the bottom line. And if there's no business, there's no customer operations. So you've got to have that focus on commerciality as well. So I hope that's a little bit of thought-provocation for you. I'm now going to invite my first three panelists to join me. So please welcome Helen, Heather, and Joe. So as they make their way onto the stage, we have, there we go. You may take a seat, And we have a microphone too. So we have Helen, who is the COO of Atom Bank, and you've been a judge on the European Awards, European Contact Centre and Customer Service Awards, but you have also won awards.
We have.
So very much award-winning. Next to Helen, we have Heather, who is Head of Operations at Benenden Health. You have been a judge on the UK Awards and the European Awards, and at the Europeans for quite a long time. And at the European Awards, Benenden Health won bronze for Best Contact Strategy. So you are aware of that side of the process too. And we also have Joe with us, who is Head of Customer Care at Gusto. Have I said Gusto right?
You have. It's controversial, but I say Gusto, so
Okay, we're on Gusto. And my goodness, you've won a lot of awards. A lot of awards.
12, I think, over the last 5 years, which is great.
So you know, that's a lot of awards. So when we were talking before, because we actually have a conversation before we come up and do this, and one of the things that you all said was that the number one priority is strategy, getting the strategy right. Helen, I'm going to come to you first. You must have a pretty good strategy at Atom Bank, digital first. Tell us, what is your strategy?
Yeah, so we had a very, very clear strategy from day one. So we are the first UK's digital bank. So, you know, as Stu was talking about earlier, when we started that journey 10 years ago, digital banks on apps just weren't the thing, but obviously they're quite common now, but we were very, very disruptive when we first started our journey. And we wanted to build something that was intuitive, really, really simple for customers to use to do their banking. But we also wanted to make sure that we had, so it would be very much self-service, so that was the key aim. But we wanted to make sure that we had a contact centre there that was able to support customers if they had any technical issues with accessing the app or they needed any support. So unlike other organisations that were doing a digital journey and preventing customers from actually, you know, making it really difficult for customers to get in touch, we wanted to make that really, really easy and simple. So through lots of different channels, they could contact us. And we made sure we didn't have an IVR as well, so it was quite controversial at the time, but we didn't want to have an IVR system, so customers come straight through to an agent who's multi-skilled in everything. And And we also started right from the very start, capturing the demand that was coming through. So as was mentioned earlier as well, every contact that we get through we class as failure demand because we're a self-service proposition. So even from the very early days, we started off with Excel spreadsheets and gradually transformed that to something much more sophisticated over time. But we capture all of that demand, we look at the insights, and then we use that to change the customer journey and improve, and that's what we've done over time. And one of the key things around my measure of success was keeping our contact centre really small. So we still only have 35 agents covering a 7-day week. And, because we've done that through continuously tackling, reducing, eliminating demands coming through, but still being there to provide an exceptional service to those customers who need us.
Wow, thank you so much. Now, Joe, you've got to have had a pretty strong strategy to have got yourself to a point where you've won 12 awards. Tell us about your strategy.
Yes, I think probably the starting point for me is actually taking a step above the strategy. So I think kind of our starting point was to really understand what will be the guiding principles and vision that we want to achieve. So vision is in the outcome for our customers. So I think we're very conscious that strategy naturally will evolve over time, but we want to really have that North Star that we're always driving towards and kind of guide our decision making. So I think that's great in theory. I think the challenge is making sure that kind of you operationalise that by truly getting buy-in from everyone across the business, everyone from C-suite through to agents to various stakeholders across the business as well. So from a Gusto specific perspective, we really started out with the principle that customer care is a value generator rather than a cost centre. And I'm sure that probably resonates with many people in here already. And I think our vision was to really find that balance between service and cost. So our vision is to provide industry-defining customer care that sustainably supports our growth. So when kind of educating business around that, we're very fortunate that we're a customer-centric business at heart. Everyone from the CEO to all levels kind of really believe in customer centricity. But I think there's a well-understood kind of bottom-line impact that customer care has. I think the important role was to really educate on where are the value-add elements of customer care. So we've done lots of work to quantify the impact on a positive CSAT experience to retention. So we can see that every time a customer had a good experience with us, we drove up retention by 15%. And likewise, educating the business on the power of the insights that we get as a team. I'm sure, as most people in this room are aware, we sit on top of a huge wealth of kind of qualitative and quantitative insights, and that can have a massive benefit on the business. So I think from that point, it made the defining and execution of strategy a lot simpler because everyone was really bought into what was the outcome that we're trying to achieve from our customers. And kind of last point I would say is a lot of our focus from a strategic perspective has been around implementation of digital journeys for our customers, but having that clear vision of what we're trying to achieve helps us to kind of keep honest on that balance between service level and costs that we're trying to achieve.
So I'm going to ask you an additional question. That sounds like you've got a great culture. Describe what your culture is. And one of the things that I'm mindful of is that your culture is appropriate to your business, and how you describe it won't be the same as everybody else would describe their own cultures. But what's your culture like?
I'd say there's a couple of things. So to kind of bring to life the customer centricity. So from a Gusto perspective, we have a tribe operating model, and each tribe is built to kind of be autonomous and to deliver value to customers quickly. And we map all of our teams around specific points in the customer journey to make sure that every decision we're making is truly customer-centric. And I think where the tech enables that, so we've got a strong belief that tech will enable both customer experience and agent experience alike as well. So we often refer to ourselves as a tech and data company that loves food. I think at the heart of who we are, we're a data and tech company. So I think that combination of utilising tech and data to truly drive a good customer experience and building our entire operating model around that kind of forces us to be customer-centric, which is great. Nice.
And I think we'll be touching on the whole data piece a little bit later. Thank you. So I want to move on. Heather. I know that through the work that you've been doing at Benenden, but also from your history on the awards, employee engagement is something that you care a lot about. What have you been impressed by with what you have seen over the last year or two?
From an awards perspective,
Yeah, well, thinking about from what you've seen in the awards, but the kinds of ways that organisations are really engaging their people.
yeah, it's a great question, Leigh. And I'll probably bring it back to home in terms of our own business, because it was interesting when you talked about AI and healthcare when the opening from Stu, and healthcare is really becoming forefront from an absolute technology perspective. We're a very traditional business. Our USP was customer service. But a couple of years ago, we recognised, and we are small like Helen's, we have about 70 agents, but we're growing as well. So how do we harness technology, but at the same time keep our USP and create our teams to be more engaged with the customer? Historically, our staff had to be very knowledgeable and technical. So we invested in some changes to our infrastructure. We redesigned our whole claims system so that they no longer had to hold the technical knowledge, and the system leads them through the journey. And then last year we brought Genesis Cloud in, which really was a game changer for us, because that enabled us then to pick off some of the low-hanging fruit of callback functionality, automating ID, chat functionality went live last week, but we're using some of the simple transactions to make the speed of the journey quicker for our members, but that creates capacity for our people to spend more quality time talking to our members, who it's an emotive topic, healthcare, and can be quite clinical. So it's really important that they have that time to focus on those topics rather than having to get through with the nitty-gritty of some of the more technical processes.
No, I love that. And actually, like you say, giving your people more time is really important. Joe, I'm going to come back to you because I want to pick up on this this enabling your frontline. And when we spoke before, you talked about the impact that your frontline can have on CSAT, customer lifetime value. Tell us, how did you do that? How have you enabled your frontline?
Yes, I think maybe to start with that point, a bit of a build on my previous point, I think from an agent perspective, it can be, there's an inherent risk that you can get so absorbed into day-to-day that you lose the kind of understand of how your work truly impacts the wider business strategy. I mean, having been on the phones myself, you know that the impact you have on our individual customer, but I think sometimes there could be a disconnect with really understanding how you're driving wider business success. So I think the connection between CSAT to lifetime value is a great way of actioning that, because we can let agents be aware that for every interaction, there's X pounds on the table in terms of top line retention benefits. So I think it really gives the team a holistic view of the importance they have in the business. And I think the other two sides of it, I would say, would be how can we really involve the team in wider business decisions? So as I kind of spoke to earlier, I think there's a huge amount of insights within customer care. So we've got several technologies that we use to kind of analyse the different types of contacts that are coming in. But I think there's still an incredibly important role for agents to play in kind of bringing that to life for other teams. So I think one kind of example that really sticks out in my mind for the last 12 months is we have a really sophisticated solution involving a Slack channel where agents can kind of pop in individual bits of feedback from customers. And over kind of the last 6 months, we saw an increase in customers asking for meals that use less gas or electric. I think cost of living crisis, many customers kind of facing the pinch. So it's kind of candid feedback that our team were passing on to our recipe development team. And within 8 weeks from kind of an agent suggesting that change, our team have built an entire range of oven-free meals, and actually the oven-free roast dinner, which I actually didn't get to taste myself, but the oven-free roast dinner is one of the most popular recipes of the year. And I think that's one kind of small example where it's great for the team to be able to see that they have a place in not just identifying pain points for customers, but really having the opportunity to drive the wider propositional roadmap. And maybe the last point to call out is equally taking the time to really celebrate the success of the team. I think we're all guilty of it. You always kind of deliver a project onto the next big thing and don't always kind of carve out the time to look back and celebrate the success of what we've achieved. And I think that's one of the reasons we go into European Contact Centre Awards, because it's great for us to be telling the team that they're doing an amazing job, and we see that for our metrics internally. I think it's great to have that external recognition that we're truly doing something special, and everyone's got a role to play in that.
I love that. Clearly, I love that. But no, I love that. And in particular, actually, what I love about that is that you are using your data and your insights to make a real difference in your operation and for your customers. And Helen, you very much champion the voice of the customer. How do you use insights?
Yeah, so very similar to what Joe's talking about. So we capture insights from numerous different sources. So we'll just look out what's going on generally, and then we'll capture agents, feedback, every single contact demands, as we've talked about. We capture what that is. We'll capture complaints data. We do feedback surveys, and then we've also got App Store ratings, so customers leave feedback on the App Stores, and we also use other review sites like Trustpilot and Fifu. And what we do is we bring that all together, and we actually use some AI, and that analyses all of that data and really pinpoints areas of customer difficulty or, again, opportunities that we can implement to improve things. And we've done that year after year after year. So starting off from a very low point in our App Store ratings, and now because we keep doing it continually and it works really, really well, we are 5-star on Trustpilot and 5-star on iOS and Android App Store ratings, because we just don't stop it, because I don't think you can ever stop, because there'll always be something you can tweak or improve. But you can build that sort of virtuous cycle, which really reaps results.
Love that. And so one of the areas that I've been finding myself in conversations about is that the level of customer service these days is not quite what it once was. And we talk about this quite a lot in the CCMA, and how do we support the industry? And the conversations I'm finding myself in are, sorry, Sabio, but are putting technology front and center of the problem. And Joe, I know you've been through some learning on this. Please, can you share with us the learning that you have been through?
Not just to defend Sabio, I think my personal view would be that technology itself isn't the problem. I think the technology landscape in customer care has never been stronger. I think we've got way more tools than we've ever had to deliver both an amazing agent and an amazing customer experience. I think the challenge comes down to making sure that as CX leaders, we're using the right technology for the right use case and for the right reason. And I think there's probably a couple of examples within Gusto where I think we've got that balance right, and candidly a couple of times where we maybe haven't got that balance quite right. And so,
please, could you put your...
Yep, no, it's a bit clearer. When we set out on our digital automation journey, we kind of went in with a key principle around we only wanted to implement self-service options where it truly enhanced the customer experience and would never look at it through the lens of pure deflection. Where we really started from that point was one of our simpler use cases. So almost 50% of our queries are kind of raised around quite simple, less emotive cases around ingredient-based issues. So that was a prime case for self-service. So over a number of years, we kind of rolled out self-service options, and now we're automating almost 90% of that workflow, and it's got CSAT that's comparable, if not higher, than agent channels. So I think it's really one of those win-wins where the customer's winning, cost base is winning, and agents are winning because they can spend their time on more complex tasks where they can add more value. I think over time, we started to move into some of our more emotive and more complex work cases. And there's one specific example where over time we managed to drive self-service of up to 30% of our most complex workflow, which on one side, pat on the back, we're doing an amazing job. It's going to help to remove lots of costs. But when looking at CSAT comparably was around 20 percentage points lower than agent channels. And I think looking back to that balance between the impact of service on retention to cost, it's one of those points where we had to make the decision to actually pull back on that, because despite the fact we were getting high levels of automation, fundamentally it wasn't the right thing to do by our customers. So I think it's kind of coming back to the challenge, it's really making sure that we're using the right technology for the right reasons.
And you also have a very clear continuous improvement program. You're continually looking, using data, arguably, to look at how you can continue to innovate and make a difference for both your people and your customers. So Heather, how do you keep improving and innovating? And what have you seen on all of your journeys as a judge?
Yeah, I think it's building on the topics we've just talked about. And I think you and I talked about you have to know your customer. So building on what we've just said, yes, you can put technology at the forefront, but is that technology the right thing for your customer? And don't be afraid to make that decision. In terms of continuous improvement, that's looking for everything from all the insights we've talked about, but even tapping into customers who perhaps don't contact you. So we have proactively looked to contact people who maybe have authorised a claim but then don't use the claim. We would outbound them and find that out. So continuous improvement for us is all aspects of insight, but then internally with our people, similar things to what Helen and Joe have talked about. We have a Word on the Street programme, which is grassroots up. We have a smart champion network across of our whole organisation. So it's not just the big projects driving CI, it's the little nuggets as well make the difference. And believe in that and celebrate it and recognise those little things as well to really embed that culture from a CI perspective.
So how do you know, I'm going to stay with you, Heather, how do you know when you're getting it right? How do you know that your strategy and the way that you are working with your people, dealing with your customers, and that all the processes and tech that you've got, how do you know when you're getting that right?
I think it goes exactly right back to that first slide you put up. So are you meeting all your business objectives? Have you got great customer feedback? What are your CSAT scores doing? What's your engagement levels? And are you efficient? All those elements have to come together and all be going in the right direction at the same time. And when one isn't, that's when you start putting the lens on it to look at it more closely. But you can't take your eye off the ball on any of those metrics. They are all really important.
Joe, how do you know when you're getting it right?
I think exactly that. I think ultimately customers and agents will tell you, and I think whether that be as directly or maybe indirectly through the health metrics that we have in place, whether it be NPS, ENPS, CSAT, contact rate, I think ultimately it's down to us to make sure that we've got the right metrics in place to take a balanced view of the experience, and ultimately customers will tell you through those avenues.
I have to ask you, what metrics do you, what is the one or two key metrics that you look at?
I could probably take another 5-10 minutes on a number of metrics. I think when looking at experience, ultimately we're looking at kind of cost per contact at a high level, department level. But when you kind of come closer in, we'll tend to look at CSAT as our main measure of quality for customer outcome. We'll look at productivity from an agent experience perspective, as well as ENPS, so employee net promoter score. And then we'll use contact rate as a barometer for customer experience as well, because one of the key things we haven't spoken to is a lot of our focus is improving CSAT when an issue has happened, but ultimately we should be working with the business to identify the root causes and solve them in the first instance.
Absolutely. Helen, same question to you. How do you know when you're getting it right?
Yeah, so, Joe and Heather have said it all really, but I think wrapped around that, we've got to go back to the culture point. I think if you've got the right culture across your business, that's customer-centric but looks after your people, I think they're the ingredients for success, to be honest, because if you get that right, then you're on to a winner.
Love it. Thank you so much. Guys, please don't go anywhere. I am now going to invite our consultants and to come and join me. Please join me, Don, Neris and Jason. We'll see. If there's not enough room, come and sit over here and I'll perch on the side. Come and sit over here and I'll perch on the side.
Thank you.
This is live. This is live.
It's cosy.
It's cosy. So right, so we've heard what good looks like, and to be honest with you, we've heard a lot about data and insights, I think, along the way, and how important that is. Oh, bless you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you. I am going to come and sit and perch with you. Okay, so Don, I want to come to you first. You are 35 years in CX.
Yeah, long time. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I had to rub it in.
And I read that someone has said that you are one of the most impactful management consultants. So I have to ask you.
Did I write that?
Apparently, someone said that about you. So I have to ask you. Are contact centre leaders getting access to the data that they need, and are they using it?
That's a yeah but no but answer. So are people getting access to the data? Yes, they are. Is it coming in the right order? Are things the way they should be? Possibly not. So what was interesting listening to all of the practitioners here who live in the sharp end, data is absolutely key to changing how you can adjust your business or can drive your strategies or whatever else. The interesting thing for me is that if you look back at, I think the lady from Atombank said that they started with spreadsheets. What's interesting is that the 2D graphs that we use go back to 1637. So it's like 400 years. So we're putting all sorts of tech around stuff. And then what we do is we look at things in a straightforward 2D format. Spreadsheets turned up in 1979 on VisiCalc, and then in 1985 on Windows. So that's still a long time ago, and things really haven't changed much. But to your point, how you take data, how you use data, the utilization of data is absolutely key to how you can feed into your organization and how you can drive your strategy. The fact that data is now much more complex, you've got multiple channels, you've got arrival, not just gate count data of how many calls you took, how long did a call take, etc. You've got vast amounts of other data because you're really now in a digital world where you've got all sorts of other metrics that you apply from the different apps, dwell times, all sorts of things like that. And really what we're starting to see now is a move towards a much more involved use of digital data and how people can use that. Now, from an organisational point of view, if you look at exactly where people are using it, you're starting to see a move away from traditional spreadsheets to much more complex tooling. I don't want to use the AI word, but a lot of it is AI driven. But to start to build three-dimensional models of data. And typically, and certainly what I do from a strategy point of view, and I'd stress this to anybody, is look outside of your own industry for how you use data. If you look in the world of science, or if you look in the world of finance, they are doing things very, very differently when it comes to interpreting hugely complex data. In the world of medical, hugely complex data. But you can build constellations of data that says, okay, if yes, you have got your XY graph of saying how many calls turned up at this point in the day, but inside of that, you've got sentiments, you've got insights, you've got all sorts of other things, but getting contextual, intuitively accurate data to be used is difficult, but it's changing and it's moving from 2D to 3D, where you can take data, spin it around, and it's not necessarily the Google Glass thing or the Apple. I've never seen the Apple goggle things. I mean, I've seen people on it and it looks a bit weird. But the point is, using 3D data, even on a 2D screen, means that you can see where things are happening and you can make connections between. It's not just when somebody wants to call you or to contact you, there are other things driving that and other things driving that. So you see beyond the obvious connections that drive those contacts. And I think, from Gusto's point of view as well, there are parameters such as the cost of living crisis that drive behaviours. And it's important to understand those things because they will drive contacts. That will have a resonance through to what the agent said. So it's conversational AI. There is information buried in everything we do, but we have to look at it. So data is absolutely key.
So how far away are we from, we've got 3 guests here who are working and leading operations that are, frankly, leading the way. For many organisations, how far are they away from getting to the point where they can use data for 3D modelling?
Actually, not that far. The data. So here's the thing: the data exists. It's just that people have been wedded to, and we've all seen this. We'll get a really, really complex system, then everybody exports it and sticks it in Excel. So it's like, for Pete's sake, they've done it again. But the point is, the data exists and the tooling now exists, and that's why I say looking outside of those in our traditional contact center industries, these tools do exist. So it's not that far off. It's not commonplace in our industry, but the tooling is there, and I defer to Atombank as well, in terms of, I think they're starting to use some of those tools. So this is not pie in the sky stuff, 5 years from now we'll all be doing whatever. No, the stuff is here now. I'm involved with a consortium that are looking at how they change data visualization, because the patterns that you see, and I say see because spreadsheets are very dry. You look at it and it goes, it goes up, or it goes down, or it's red, or it's whatever else, and that's fine. But when you put that into a constellation of data in a three-dimensional model, you see patterns, you go, what's that weird thing in there? And then you zoom into it, and suddenly you can see that actually, because you're pulling in data from CRM, you're pulling in data from other sources that have nothing to do with your normal day-to-day life. It's there. So it's real, it's here. And yeah, there is tooling, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about some of the tooling that's out there.
Perfect. Thank you, Dom. Now, Neris, 25 years in the industry.
26, yeah, 25.
Please, could you use your...
Oh, yeah, 25, 26.
25,
Old.
26 years. And you have run contact centre operations in the BPO space.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people knew that. But these days, you're obviously consulting. You are a judge. You have recently done an appraisal with the Contact Centre Standards Framework.
I have.
Which is very exciting. And you and I often talk about enabling the front line.
Yep.
We often have these conversations, and I love the passion that you have for really supporting the people on the front line. Where should leaders be really focusing on improving that colleague experience?
Yeah, I suppose we do. And I'm Welsh, and I did run ops for a long time, so that's where the passion comes from, I suppose. And I guess leaders, we are galloping now towards the end of Q1, which is unbelievable this year. And leaders everywhere are understanding where they can deploy AI to add value. And I guess no more so, and as highlighted by Sam Altman, who's the reinstated CEO of OpenAI, no more so than in contact centres. But I suppose the reality is it's not in this sort of apocalyptic way that some people are talking about. In the short to mid-term, it is about that adding value and empowering and giving confidence. So I suppose, the exciting thing that I'm seeing with the technology and how it's supporting the front line is the ability to offer that guidance and support for advisors. So yes, it's given them a better depth of transparency and insight, like Don said, in terms of being able to navigate and understand their individual performance. But in the now, it's acting like a sat-nav for their conversations, and not like a really crappy sat-nav that you used to have, like Waze, where it knows where the potholes are and it can help the advisors get to the end destination of the call much more efficiently and effectively. And that is really, really vital, because these interactive virtual agents are really offering this the advisor community sort of confidence that they've sometimes lacked. So I spend a lot of time sitting next to advisors, and especially when I'm doing discoveries and they're working from home and we're chatting through things. And confidence, like Damon Albarn says, is a preference. And what the alternative is that horrible, cold fear that they have on their face when they're asked a question that they simply don't know the answer to. That rising of their pulses when, they're trying to navigate a conversation that's clearly escalating and further. And this intervention now of real-time support and assistance is giving them confidence. And once you get that, we're seeing that feeling means that they aren't leaving, because if it's not managed, and we talk about what's broken, sometimes these aren't managed. And the consequence of not managing that fear and supporting the advisors is they will leave. So I think leaders really need to focus and invest in supporting their advisors through these new tools that are available to them. And I used to have an imaginary friend called Sarah Lamb. I don't know why she was called Sarah Lamb, but I feel it's a bit like that. It's a bit like offering them this guiding support on the sidelines that's there to give them confidence and support if times get tricky.
Thank you. Sarah Lamb, is that your...
I literally don't know why I called her Sarah Lamb. Sarah's quite a common name in my era, I think.
Was she a lamb?
No, she was a human. It was just her surname.
Oh, okay.
She was nice.
Thank you, Neris. Now, Jason, you have been instrumental, and first, thank you, but you've been instrumental in building out the contact centre standards framework. And I know you haven't done it on your own. You have had a lot of support around you. But you've already done quite a few assessments.
Yes.
Which has been quite exciting. Where do you think, from what you've seen and from what you do in your day job and the experiences that you have, I know you also judge on the European Awards, what have you seen that you think that leaders need to be focusing on?
I think it's building on everything that these guys have been saying, and particularly about, you know, what we've heard about some really good experience groups here. It's making sure that taking the data from the 2D versions that we used to see, it's looking at what Sarah is thinking and giving them that voice, and actually taking out what we've heard in every contact. Are we measuring it? Are our colleagues truly believing that they've got a voice in your organisation? Have you got a framework and a process in place to get that message from the communication and from the contact into the decision making and the product selection teams, and making sure that those guys in recipes understand what's been said? Because what I tend to find is that we still operate too much in silos. So across the contact centre organisations, we've got the voice of the customer. We are listening to and talking to the customer every single day. The question is, have your leadership? And what have you done to take that story that you're hearing at the front line into your business to really drive value and add value in those conversations? Because we are indeed the customer voice, and we're also the conscious side of the business. We're looking at how effective marketing are being, how effective that product is landing, how effective operations are being on a day-by-day basis. And it's our accountability in the contact centre environment to give all of our colleagues the voice that says not only are we empowered to resolve the issue, but you're also engaged to drive the feedback and help us as an organisation improve. And I think that's where I come across in many of these instances measures that are still out of date, measures that have been there since the spreadsheets first came out, because we think that's the way we need to measure these things. And we seem to not be changing as quickly and as dramatically as perhaps we ought to. So let's get to the outcome-based measures. Let's make sure that our colleagues understand when we say we want to hear from you, we don't mean in a quarterly survey or an annual survey. We want to hear every day what's hitting the bump stops, what's causing our customers a problem, and actually how can we take that story into the boardroom and make it actually active, make it valuable, and then make change happen. Because then we become a customer hub. Then we become something much more engaging than just a dry contact centre where, yes, you can deploy some technology, but actually what we need to do is really deploy a different way of thinking. And I think that's the sort of thing that's coming out for the moment for me. Lots about how do we really drive operational awareness, but also listening so much more to our colleagues than we have in the past.
Thank you, Jason. It's over to you guys. If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask our panel. I have got some here if I get a no. We have a question here, and I think we've got some microphones. Fabulous. You guys ready?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to all the panel. Something that's really radiated from all of you guys has been about enabling, empowering the front line, making them part of the decision-making process. Each and every one of you has mentioned that. Do you have any insight or advice when it comes to the operation being outsourced? So I think from Joe, Heather and Helen, it sounded like all of your operations were in-house and onshore by the sounds of it. But how would you translate that and try and ensure those standards are still maintained if your operation is either elsewhere in the UK or even offshore?
Thank you. Neris, I'm going to go to you for that one.
Yeah, nearly 20 years in outsourcing. It's a really good question, and actually that Joe does have representation in outsource communities, and I think the outsource relationship is changing quite significantly at the moment, and the assurance, really the fact that the technology is meaning that by and large the brands are able to have the transparency of what's happening real time. going out to their customers and annotate that then, so to give context to those customers. So I think, in all honesty, that part around how do you ensure that your outsourcer is mirroring and delivering and feels that same passion to the front line, it's absolutely in their interest to have that front line serving the customers well. But I think technology wrapping around it now is giving that transparency like never before in that relationship. So it's quite an interesting dynamic at play.
Thank you, Neris. Hopefully that helped. Any other questions? Lady at the front here. You're going to get your steps in. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, with this trend towards having more and more customer service and support operations being automated through the self-service, how do you see the impact of that on the agent performance and the way how you see the skills of agents will need to evolve when we have more self-service channels being in lead of part of their job?
So we have a volunteer for that one. Jason's going to take that question.
The reason why I say I'll take that one, because I've been putting a lot of thought into that in the last few sort of sessions I've had on sites with clients. And it's about also thinking about how you evolve that role over time. So conversations I had last week with a CCMA event talked about what do we think the role of the colleague will be in the future. Clearly, we are simplifying the activities that we pass to self-service. We're actually able to pass more and more to those digital journeys. That leaves you with a tighter pool of workload, but often much higher emotional content, much higher emotional risk, and therefore value to the business to get it right. So when you look at your colleague space, it isn't about volume metrics anymore. It's about the customer outcome. It's about really ensuring that we've understood the customer's requirement, we've responded to it in the right and appropriate manner, and we've made sure we've given the right time and framework to the colleague to do that. That might mean working on emotional intelligence and delivering more around resilience training, empathy, and all of those things that we talked about as being the periphery, but ultimately for many years we dealt with just dealing with volume. And we used to just do measures and metrics that talked about volume. So it is about appropriate metrics, providing the context and making sure that as an agent, you've got the resilience training, you've got an understanding of empathy, you can understand the value of the transaction and the emotional content that's going to come to you in that way. So I think very much more about higher skilled individuals with more resilience and empathy understanding, but also then looking as change agents in your business. How can they take the insight they're being given and run with that in your business to really drive change? Okay.
Thank you, Jason. And you've challenged being appropriate for, was that 25 years as well?
Probably, yeah.
But
I'll take that.
But you have run contact centre operations yourself. It's actually only in recent years that you've gone to consulting. Yeah,
I mean, I had 15 years running an electrical retailer's contact centre group, and we had circa 1,800 people under our controls. The method that I always wanted those guys to understand was that I didn't want to measure an average journey for any customer. I wanted to understand that we'd given an appropriate response to every outcome that was requested, and hence why I do talk quite a bit about appropriate in the response that you give to your customers.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions? We have a question over here. I've lost our microphone. Oh, we've got a question. Sorry, I'm going to come to you in a moment, if that's okay. We have our microphone is at the back of the room.
Thanks, Leigh. Jerry Brown.
Hi, Jerry.
You've all spoken very eloquently about the importance of empowering your agents, the importance of culture on the environment. But having done a lot of side-by-sides myself, I know that a lot of people don't truly believe they're empowered. By people, I mean the agents, advisors, whatever we want to call them. What have you done? What have you seen as the ways that you can make sure that agents are truly empowered, they believe they're empowered, and they're able to use that empowerment to help customers and other colleagues?
Thank you, Jerry. Joe, I'm going to come to you for that one, if I may.
Yes, I think there's probably a couple of different elements behind it. I think the kind of obvious one, which hopefully most people are doing, is have those conversations with the agents, whether it be through kind of standard mechanisms, pulse surveys, employee engagement and the like, but hold regular workshops with all their teams, kind of create that environment so the team feel like they can flag if there's areas where they need more support. And I think touching to the question earlier as well, whether it be in-house teams or BPOs, make sure you're spending the time to actively spend time with agents and have those conversations. It's a bit of a follow-on point, maybe not directly related, but I think as the roles are becoming more complex in the contact centre, I think we also need to hold ourselves to account to make sure that, from a practical perspective, the team are being remunerated for that. And so we're kind of acknowledging the complexity of their role, we're acknowledging the changes in their role as well, and hopefully that combination of empowerment and reward kind of help to create that culture.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. We have another question. Go for it.
Hi, thank you so much. My name's Ed Glasgow. I'm in healthcare. And we've seen a lot of growth in restorative approach and learning over recent years. Really interesting from all of you, and thank you. In the early stages, when you don't have the metrics, how do you deal, or how did you deal with resource allocation? So in terms of time, money, expense, personnel, and get buy-in from your organisations when others within the organisation might well push against you? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to take... Heather, I am looking at you to take that one, if that's okay.
Because he said healthcare.
Because you said healthcare.
So going back to days of no technology and doing workforce planning, yeah, been there, seen that. Unfortunately, it was the old spreadsheet method. But I guess it comes through in terms of the service that you're giving to your customers, and ultimately the exec team are really keen to understand that it's the cornerstone of your business. So I guess what you're saying is, how do you still influence without the benefit of true insight and data to get the resources that you require? But it would come through in the dissatisfaction, the numbers of complaints you receive. People would be hearing it as they walk through your operation, because there would be huge member dissatisfaction, and nobody wants to be in that place. But I would really push your business to invest in some technology to do workforce planning. It's probably the one area that absolutely needs that investment, and it's the first thing we did at Ben & Dunn. When I joined, we were on spreadsheets, and that's the first pot of money we spent to understand and get the data to do proper workforce planning, because it paid dividends in influencing and getting the right resource to enable us to deliver great service.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any other questions? We have a question over here. The question is, which microphone is closest?
One there.
It's on its way. Go for
Morning,
it.
thank you, panel. With this technology becoming more and more ingrained within various different indices, what would be your key considerations or factors when contingency planning, should this no longer be available for whatever period of time?
Oh, do you know what, Helen? I'm going to come to you for that one if I can. Contingency planning. I mean, given Atom is digital first, you must have quite a big contingency plan.
Yeah, so I have the joy of looking after operational resilience as well for the bank, so that's great. So yeah, we have a lot of plans in place for the unfortunate cases when things go wrong. But what we've been doing a lot of more recently from a technology point of view, and obviously usually things go wrong when you deliver change, is moving towards very small incremental changes, fast-paced delivery. And we had an issue literally the other day, but the agents picked it up so quickly. So we had 7 customers that rang us within the space of 10 minutes. We were straight onto it, instant raise. The change was reversed within 10 minutes, and the problem was resolved. So it's taken us a long time to get there, to be fair. But, you know, it is that sort of process, and being able to be responsive, being able to react, because you just don't want, especially when you've got one channel, for that to disappear. And one of the key things that we've learned as well is the communication piece. So if we have an issue, we have a status page on the app, and that goes up straight away, just letting the customers know what the issue is, what the problem is. And that takes away a lot of the heat, because all customers want to know. So as long as you keep people informed, keep the communication lines open, then that usually manages it really effectively as well.
Thank you, Helen. So we've got one more question, and then go on, one more question. Do you want to shout it out? And I'll repeat it. I'll try.
So I'm just thinking about, there's a lot of, oh, there we go. Thank you. Hi. I just had a question around the kind of tech that we're talking about, because there's a lot of tech and functionality around taking the data, analysing the data and generating those insights. And I guess from kind of the beginning of where you guys all started in the journey of pulling that together, how did you kind of see the wood through the trees around what was most suitable for your business?
Is there anybody in particular you'd like to ask that to?
I think maybe Joe, sorry. Just
it
feels like it's a
Joe.
bit more resonating with us. So.
Yeah, I think probably a couple of points to make. So I guess in terms of, obviously, there is plethora of like technologies in the market, and a big challenge is seeing the wood through the trees, as you mentioned. So I think it's testing is the simple answer. So I think it's one, really understanding the first instance, what are you looking to get from the tooling? So giving kind of Gusto, what worked for us was we wanted a tool that was very simple to use, anyone in the business to be able to access it without needing to become trained for 4 or 5 hours on how to dig insights. And I think that was kind of a guiding principle. We wanted simplicity and accessibility rather than complexity and depth to kind of like streamline the feedback to the business. But I think ultimately, once you kind of zone in on kind of what direction you want to go to, I think it's a case of just test the waters, light touch. And again, I think someone mentioned it earlier, if you're going to fail using the technology, fail fast, move on, kind of look for the next technology.
Thank you, Joe. I have got one more question that I want to ask. And actually, I'm going to ask all of you. So mindful of time, we might have to keep the answers quite short. Is AI the answer? Is AI the answer? Where shall I start? Neris, I'm going to start.
My mother-in-law went to York on the weekend, and she came home and she said, "Oh, they're all so lovely in York. They're so sorry, Heather. They're all, but they're not. I'm sure a lot are, but I'm sure a lot aren't." But that was her representation of the brand that is York, and she didn't say they're dead efficient in York. And I'll just leave you with that thought.
Thank you, Neris. Done.
I think from my perspective, AI is we think of it as forward-facing. Actually, if you think of it as an iceberg, the bit that we see is that much. AI is influences so much that you're doing now. The stuff that you mentioned earlier about simplicity, etc., that's the bit that makes something simple that's completely invisible to you. So is it the answer? Yeah. But the human side of it is massively important. It's the old adage, it's an enabler. It is. So it's important, but it doesn't have to be in your face. So, yeah.
Thank you, John. Joe?
I think from my view, probably it sounds like a bit of a political answer, but I think it depends what answer you're trying to get to. I think it depends on the question. So I think exactly agree with the point. I think AI is an enabler to an outcome, but I think it's down to businesses to decide which outcome are you looking for, and therefore whether AI is right for yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, is AI the answer? My answer would be question mark. So I would agree with Don and Joe. It has to be relevant to your business, and it has to be relevant for your customer. So don't try and think you're trying to keep up with everybody. Just make sure it's right for your business and right for your customer.
Thank you, Heather.
I'm going to follow exactly the same trend. I think it's very much around understanding what your customer needs in your business and focusing on, does AI fix that problem, or does it take your business further, or is it just a bright, shiny new technology that someone in tech wants to implement for the hell of it? I think that's the question you need to ask yourself, really, what is it the customer needs and wants?
Thank you, Helen. Jason, no pressure, but you are the sixth person to answer the same question.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to something that Stuart said right at the top of this, and I think AI's got a part to play in allowing all of our businesses to be internally disrupted, and we ought to look at what the potential of that is, because if not, we're going to let somebody else disrupt our business for us.
Nice. Guys, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I know that you guys are going to a break, so thank you, Neris, Don, Joe, Heather, Helen, and Jason. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.